Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler, I'm now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multi-family real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Peter Dursi. Hey Pete, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Thank you, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm happy to have you here and excited to jump into today's conversation. But before we do so, do you want to give people an idea about your background, what you've been up to, and what you're up to these days?
Sure. Yeah. I've operated in the real estate industry for some 20 odd years in all sorts of capacities. Started out as a loan officer, eventually got into real estate, bought my own franchise, grew that, worked right through the 07, 08 real estate crash, pivoted, got involved in real estate in a different component, but I've been involved with property management, commercial, residential for 20 odd years now, currently acting as a broker for over 150 agents and broker associates. So I do quite a bit on the leadership / compliance front. And then I have my own team that works on my own production. And I've been pretty involved in the real estate industry here in Southern California and San Diego for quite a while. And, it always shifts, it always changes. And that's the one thing that is constant, is that you go through different markets and you just have to learn how to pivot. But the same fundamentals always apply, good customer service. And when you're running your actual practice, lead generation and all those principles, nothing changes there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Well, you've obviously had a very interesting and experienced career in real estate, but you started out as a loan officer. How did that come about? What made you want to be a loan officer? Was it just you saw dollar signs, or was there something else there?
No, when I first moved to San Diego, I was working in the marinas and down at the docks. I'd done some sailing and whatnot over my life, and still very involved in sailing. But no, I was dating a gal who had a job at a real estate firm, and she asked me to meet this gentleman who was just opening up a mortgage office, and it was back in the refi boom. Sort of like, I think, maybe this country's first refi boom, where people were just going crazy refinancing. And it was great. It was a great way to learn about the real estate industry, because it always comes down to the money. And even today, I still use a lot of the things that I learned in my conversations with different clients, because finance is a big piece to the puzzle. It's not the fun part. It's not the awesome backyard and the amazing kitchen. But it always comes down to the money and the numbers, and having some sort of background in that, I think is wise move for every agent. I mean, the agents that I've mentored over the years as well, I always try to coach them up that you should learn what your loan officer does and how that works.
Yeah, right. Because without that financing, right, component to it, what can you buy? If you don't have cash, you can't buy anything, right? So this essentially kills the deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same deal as, new agents are always sort of instructed to get their clients pre-qualified before they spend time showing them around to different properties. And, until you do, you never know what their purchasing power is, or what their comfort level is. Some folks may qualify for way more than they actually want to spend based off of what they want their monthly nut to look like. It's a huge component to the real estate sales game.
Yeah, very interesting. How long did you do that for?
About 4 years or so. I mean, I saw when I saw the real estate, when I saw the refi boom sort of coming to an end, I knew I had to get into the purchase market. And I wound up buying a Help You Sell franchise, and I continued to operate as a loan officer, which was wonderful, because people would come in, we'd talk about buying a house where I'd work. It was a one-stop shop, and that was a fun run right up until 07, 08, when the short sale market hit. And man, that was quite a ride. It was like the faucet was turned off overnight.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But going back to the refi boom, so essentially the refi, I've never heard someone speak about that. That's why I'm asking. So the refi boom was essentially when first time everyone realized that they could refinance to a lower rate. What was the refi
Yeah,
boom?
I think it was in the early 2000s, and I think some federal and state laws just had changed the way that people thought about financing their home, as opposed to going through their traditional bank. And all of a sudden, brokerages opened up, and there were wholesale lines and mortgage bankers, mortgage brokers. The industry just sort of changed at that time. And in California, at least, you could be a loan officer with a California license. You did not, a real estate license from the Department of Real Estate. You did not need the NMLS endorsement. So it was a little more wide open, and a lot of folks just got into it. And rates had I think there was a combination. I think there was marketing, a big marketing piece to it. And folks just realized that they could tap into the equity in their home in a way that maybe past generations hadn't. So this is, again, going back to the early 2000s. And I think the market, it sort of preceded everything we're going through today, and just people getting wise with their money and realizing, hey, if I can borrow at this rate and maybe invest it and earn a return at a higher rate, you know, uh, refis became tools rather than just you buy your house and you try to pay it off. Now all of a sudden people tap into it and tap into it again and pay off college tuitions, and you know how it goes. So yeah, but that was that again, that refi boom. Yeah, I mean, it sort of dates me a little bit, but that was a nutty period. I mean, people were just expecting to get calls from mortgage brokerages, and they needed to be educated. I mean, the whole United States, I felt like at that time, sort of was getting an education on uh, finances. you
Yeah.
know, just in the bigger picture and the larger scope.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me how um, people always have a certain way of thinking for a while, but then that can change, and then everyone changes. Everyone can kind of we think in a herd mentality a lot of times, right? It's just what everyone else is doing is what we're going to do, and then
Right.
for the longest time, I'm sure people weren't thinking about refinance. Now everyone's opened up to that, and now it's the herd mentality. Okay, refis are okay, and that's always interesting to me, that mentality of like you want to do what everyone else is doing, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, the psychology of it is fascinating. I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, when times are good, people think they're always going to be good. And when times are going bad, people think it's always going to be bad. And you're right. It takes sort of these fundamental shifts, either in society at large or an industry at large, for people's way of thinking to change. And that's happened several times throughout my career. I mean, we just went through another shift, and I think we'll have another one coming soon enough. So it is the psychology of real estate is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you said you were a loan officer, but then you not only went to be an agent, but you bought a brokerage.
I figured that was the best way to keep the lead funnel going was,
Ah,
yeah, and I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And the organization I bought into at the time was called Help You Sell. They're not around anymore, but they were a flat fee, like a flat fee listing service provider. So instead of charging the traditional 6%, it was a flat fee that was much less than that. And it was great. For the demographic and area that we had our office set up in, it was well received and people liked it. And off of the listings that we got came the buyers, and then those buyers needed financing. We had some in-house escrow and title at the time, and yeah, it was great. We were right next to a Starbucks, so we had the pictures of the homes in the window. People would get a coffee, come look at the windows. Next thing you knew, they came in and were having conversations, and that's it. Real estate is a relationship game. Um, that's been a key to my career, is building my business one client at a time, knowing that it's not just a point of sale transaction. People don't come in, pay for something, and then leave. There's 30 days of looking, there's 30 days of writing offers. Then once you get it accepted, you got another 30 days, so the whole process is 90 days. And in that time, you become a therapist and a marriage counselor and a psychologist and their friend. There's a lot that goes into real estate, but the relationship is at the forefront, in my opinion.
yeah, but and it was a franchise, right? So obviously they're guiding you through it, but still, it's not a brand new business. But the agent side, even though you're a loan officer and you're aware of how real estate works and the ins and outs, but still being an agent and running a brokerage is, imagine, a lot different than being a loan. How did you make that transaction? Did you have any coaching? Did you have any mentors?
I did have some coaching and some mentors for sure. Yes, some great people in my life at the time that really helped me through that transition. But it was also a leap of faith, and I was young enough at the time where I think I was less fearful than I might be today. But yeah, sometimes when you're afraid and you jump anyway, good things happen, and we all find ourselves in those on those sort of cliffs at various times in our lives. And so it was scary. I did have good people to help me, and which is why I always try to give back and help others that reach out for it. Um, and yeah, it, it was a transition and it was a shift, but Help You Sell, like many of the other big box real estate companies, yes, they have a formula, they have systems and models to follow, and I think that helped as well. But when you have that entrepreneurial spirit, it sometimes you just do things and you just go for it.
Yeah, no, and I love that you did that. Don't get me wrong. I want to commend you. I love that you did that. Right. It's like a big step, but if you don't take big steps, right, you don't get big rewards, right? You sort of
I
grow as
think,
well, right?
yeah, I think that's right. It is no risk, no reward. Of course, you want to be educated and informed. And I will say there were negatives to that, to running that business as well. I mean, it was a high overhead model, which made it very difficult to keep the doors open and the lights on when the shift happened and the short sale market, fell on us. Um, so there were things there, plus the oversight and sort of micromanagement that a franchisee has under the franchisor's umbrella, as opposed to running, say, a boutique brokerage. I mean, there was a lot of learning. I mean, in a way, it was a business school for me. Going through that, but you put in enough hard work and time, and when you're running a business, it becomes your baby, and it's nights and weekends. I mean, I was acting as the janitor, the receptionist, the loan officer, the agent. I wore a lot of hats just to make it work. But bringing in good people is always the key. That was another lesson I learned out of that experience: is having the right people as mentors and employees. Whether they're W-2'd or 1099, which sort of does make an accountability difference, but nonetheless, good people is one key ingredient to running, in my opinion, a successful business.
Yeah. So, and then when you were starting out, then did you have to, when new agents would come, were you in charge of training them, or did you have training staff there?
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing, is that I sort of wound up taking myself out of my role as a salesperson, and getting involved in the admin and accounts payable and receivable and coaching and training. And so I wound up giving a lot more of myself to others, and I took myself right out of that salesperson lane. And once you do that, it's not that it's hard to go back, but it's easy to let things sort of spin out of control, and you become the jack of all trades and master of none. And in recent years, I've sort of learned, it was sort of as a result of one of the recent shifts that I realized I wanted to just boil it down to just me and my production again. And I did that for a while, and I loved it. And then, later on in my career, an opportunity came up to be the designated broker for a Keller Williams office in La Jolla. And that's been amazing for 5 years. I really do believe in Gary Keller and the Keller Williams business model, his integrity, his character, his vision. I've bought into that. And it took me a long time to drink the Kool-Aid, because I wasn't sort of into the rah stuff that a lot of other brokerages put out there. I just think he's got his head and his heart in the right place, and so I'm happy to be a part of that organization now, currently. Um, so.
So what is your role now in that business? Obviously, being the broker of that company, right? But what does that necessarily entail?
It entails oversight of all of our agents' business and how they run their business, the compliance, the documents, any issues that come up or fires that need to be put out, sort of mitigating problems. I try to have a good relationship with all of our associates, and we have structured team meetings on a weekly and monthly basis. But sort of just, look, the industry changes a lot. There's constantly new forms, new rules as a result of, things that happened in our world and our industry in previous years, that Department of Real Estate, whether it's National Association of Realtors, the California Association of Realtors, California DRE, they're constantly revising sort of how we can operate. And with this past year, with COVID, I mean, there were so many changes. We were considered an essential service. How are we going to get our troops out there in people's homes and kitchens when they're afraid of this deadly virus? What kind of PPE is required? What kind of disclosures are required? How should the open houses be run? It was a busy year that coincided with, arguably one of our best years perhaps ever at that particular office. And I'm sure a lot of brokerages can say that around town.
Yeah, you said something off air there that I wanted to repeat that I didn't know, is that apparently 2020 was the year that there's been the most transactions ever in the history of on the records of transactions in 1 year.
For the United States, that is correct. So again, as we discussed off the air, I mean, whether people were leaving the city to get more rural or get some space, whether they were moving home because of job loss or just to be closer to family during the pandemic, there were so many different reasons and motivations for people to move, i.e. buy and sell, that yes, it was the single busiest year in the United States in transaction count ever. So will next year be better from the standpoint of more probably not, which we also discussed. And so, yeah, I mean, there's likely to be another shift, ahead of us here. It's been a seller's market for a long, long time in Southern California and many places. But, this is the story I'm hearing all across the country, too. I mean, it doesn't matter where people were or currently are. Everybody's talking about how difficult it is to get their offers accepted, and how prices are going through the roof. And, it's been a similar story across the board.
Yeah, no, and with this podcast, I'm lucky enough to speak to people all over the country, and it's the same. Like I love talking about real estate, so I always talk a little bit beforehand and ask them how's the market, and it's the same thing: low inventory, tons of buyers, low interest rate driving that, and just you can't find enough homes to make offers on because there's multiple offers at list or above, cash offers coming in. It's just absolutely craziness. And my wife is actually a real estate agent I'm in Las Vegas, here in Asia, and she's witnessing the same thing. Like if it's a fair price house, in the right price range, you better come out in above, hardly get as little contingencies as possible.
Yeah, swing hard.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah,
it's brutal. It's tough for buyers out there. I mean, it's frustrating. And then, after submitting so many offers, let's say for a buyer, perhaps that didn't get their offer accepted initially, I could see how they might turn on their agent and be like, are you doing something wrong? But no, in many cases, it's just that people are coming in all cash. They're removing appraisal contingencies, loan conditions, reducing timeframes and terms, above list price offers. So it is challenging out there. And again, sometimes relationships matter, and just, I think, this period has forced the professionals to become even more professional about how they run their business, because it's just that much tougher.
Yeah. How are you advising your agents on those kind of things, when that's happening, and it's, it's not the agent's fault, even though the buyers might think so.
Yeah.
It's just the market. Is it about educating them about what the market is like, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think part of it is there's always a message of the moment. And so, one of the things that I'll always coach our folks up on is finding out what the seller's hot buttons are. So, even though the path of least resistance may be just to send the offer and text the agent or email the listing agent, always best to call that agent, find out why is the seller, moving? Is it downsizing? How emotionally attached to the property are there? Are there strings that you can sort of tug on with a cover letter that might appeal to the seller's heart, a little bit? So, there's different ways. Certainly, if they're just looking for the best priced offer and the least amount of headache, and for the deal not to fall out, maybe you stress those, the strength of the buyers, how much they love it. There's always a hot button for a seller. So figuring that out and then addressing it in your offer, that's the key. I think that's always been the key. So it's communication.
Yeah, that's no different to when you're trying to negotiate an investment property, right? For investors out there, right? You're trying to find out what the issue is, right? If you're either direct to the seller, or if you're going through an agent or a broker, you're trying to find out, like you said, the pain points, right? What is the reason this person is selling the house? There's always a reason, right? If it's cash out, okay, it's cash, right? Okay, the highest offer is probably going to win, right? But if he's he or she is in an urgent move to move, that they need to leave the property quickly, well, quickness of closing, right, and being able to close quickly it's just, you've got to, like you said, right, you've got to understand the reason why they're selling and try and fill in that gap and make that offer suited to what they're looking for.
Correct. I agree. Yeah.
Interesting. So going back to 08, 09, you said that it was just like a faucet turning off. You said, because I wasn't around then. I definitely wasn't paying attention to real estate. I wish I was, right? I wish I was investing back then. But then again, it was tough times, I think. It wasn't as easy as everyone says, like you could just go and buy cheap property everywhere. There's trouble getting financing, and it was scary, I think. So it wasn't quite that easy. But anyway, what can you, on your side of things, right, from an agent and owning a brokerage standpoint, what was it like for you, and especially out in California as well?
Yeah, one of the key differences, I was thinking about this not that long ago with a colleague of mine, and just talking about how this sort of shift that we just went through was different from that one. I mean, that was the single greatest housing crash, I believe, in American history. In some neighborhoods, home values went down 50%, but I think across the board it was, closer to 20%. Some places maybe 10%, but whatever it was a lot of equity that disappeared. And so, and people had bought into these homes at that time with all sorts of funky loan programs that were available at the time. So interest only, there was negam, where as soon as you bought the home, you're at 100% loan to value ratio, your mortgage was increasing because you were only making the interest payment, not the principal payment. And so all of a sudden people were underwater right off the bat in some cases. And so when that market hit, people, I think the mindset was different too. People didn't care as much about their credit reports and scores, maybe like past generations did. It was so easy to get into the home, with these stated income, stated asset, or they had a NINA loan, which was no income, no asset. So you basically just say people at the time were saying, hey, I'm a janitor, I make $300,000 a year, and there was no verifying of documents at the time with some of these products. So that was a federal flaw, in my opinion, that got us into that pickle, making it so easy to get financing. I mean, I think that came from the top down ultimately. And there were so many different layers and variables to that. But in this particular, so answering your question, what was it like to have the faucet turn off? I mean, people just threw their keys at the front door and walked away from homes. I mean, prior to that, people were buying second homes and third homes because money was so readily available. But when the short sale market hit and values dropped and people were underwater and unable to make payments, like I said, when they threw the keys at the front door, it pushed those into forbearance, then pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, and in some cases short sales. You had to shift and get a short sale processor or learn how to work through these systems. There was like one system I think called Equator, Bank of America, and a lot of the major banks used to process the files. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was very challenging. It took a long time to sell a home. Buyers had to wait 6 months, 12 months, in some cases even more. And it felt like there was no rhyme or reason to whether the banks would even accept your offer, because a lot of the back end situations were such that, maybe for tax purposes, they wanted to hold on to those negative assets. Maybe they wanted to, clear the books and get rid of them. And that was factored into whether they would accept your short sale offer or not. In some cases, there were second lenders from a totally different bank. And if you're in that second trustee position and the first lender is going to get whatever equity is available and that second lender gets zero, they're not really going to cooperate, and that was a challenge. So all of a sudden, listing and selling a home took a long time. It was a challenge. Everybody's numbers got hit. Buyers just got frustrated with the process and would walk away into it, and you'd have to start all over from scratch. And so, just commissions went down along with all the other indicators and factors. I mean, that was a difficult time to be in the real estate business. But I think it also sort of thinned out the herd and left the professionals who really were interested and invested in the industry to remain, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that now too. I think, there's a lot of folks that maybe were just part-time or dabbling in the industry, and with each shift, it sort of weeds those folks out, and maybe helps, the core of the folks in any particular market that are in that industry.
Yeah. Was it any particular big shift that you guys had to make as a business, as owning that business, the brokerage company at that time?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big lessons as a business owner was building up your reserves to be able to weather storms like that. In this particular crisis that we're in now, same thing. You've got to have 6 months of business reserves and probably equal as much in personal reserves and finances. I mean, having your financial sort of life in order and the safety net of reserves, it's just so critical to alleviate the stress. I mean, I was running that business because I just started it by my bootstraps, and there was monthly overhead and plenty of it from marketing, payroll, the lease, and so when all of a sudden the money's not coming in, but you still owe all these debts, it makes it a challenging time. I mean, so many people declared bankruptcy after that real estate crash, personal, business. I mean, it was a wild time, and this recession, because it is a recession, it just feels different because the stock market's booming, values on homes keep going up, interest rates are all-time lows. Yet there still are two sides to this country. I feel like there are a lot of people, and we spoke about this earlier too, based on the randomness of the business that they were in, either had one of their best years in 2020, or in many cases their worst years. And so it almost feels like this country and our communities have fallen into like a tale of two cities, or the haves and the have-nots. And so it's troubling to go through some of the let's say, socio-demographically, like some of the poorer neighborhoods, and witness some of the real pain that's going on out there. And I think the economy, the story of the economy in this recession that we're in, has been overshadowed by what's happening in DC and politics and elsewhere. But you know, it's a real, we talked about two random industries before the show began. A friend of mine's in the automobile industry and the tire industry, and he was saying for whatever random reason, with people working from home, they started to take care of their deferred maintenance. So they changed the tires on their car and their mom's car and their grandma's car, and that business had a boom. And you'd think it would just be the opposite because everyone's working from home, they're not driving. But on the other hand, we have florists who, you know, because people can't attend funerals and weddings were, probably at an all-time low, and, people living together, they're not sending flowers to their loved ones, perhaps because they're, with them all day, every day. The randomness of what businesses got hit, and it's disturbing and it's puzzling. And in some cases, it just feels very random also.
Yeah, and
Um,
we were saying that you just can't predict it, right? Everyone's trying to predict what's going to happen next, and it's good, right? You've got to try and guess what's going to happen next. But it's so, like, who would have thought that, right? I never would have thought until you said that story that people in the tire industry would have been doing great. Right? I would have thought the opposite. You would have think logic almost says the opposite, right? But in fact, it's that, right? Same. We recently bought a car, and I was thinking 4 or 5 months ago, oh great, car prices will go down in a while because the economy is going to go down, right? No, the absolute opposite. Car prices have shot up because there's no manufacturing to the same level. They're not importing cars, so there's a shortage of used cars. And essentially now a used car that's 1 or 2 years old, it's almost the same price as a brand new car. But you can't
right.
predict this stuff. You would never have guessed that, but it's stuff that we can't see. So I think, when we're trying to look into the future, it's really hard because you just can't see what's going to happen.
It is true. I mean, that's the thing. I think we get comfortable to think that there's some sort of expected trajectory of economies, and it's not the case. All we can do, I think, is pivot and adapt as best we can, and be flexible in that way, because you can certainly get stuck doing business the way you've always done business, and then when a shift happens in any industry, if you don't know how to pivot and adjust, yeah, I mean, that's how businesses go out and go under, or what they're offering just doesn't appeal to whoever their audience was anymore. And we've seen that in this pandemic. I mean, online ordering and those types of services, I mean, just skyrocketed.
Yeah. And I'm sure your business as well has changed, right? I'm sure there's a lot more virtual showings, the virtual video, people doing videos instead of doing the home inspection themselves. Like,
Yeah, all sorts of new service providers, 3D virtual tours, and different mapped out layouts of floor plans, and a lot of good things that we discussed earlier. I mean, I'm a glass is half full person, and try to keep my eyes on the positive. And I think there have been a lot of positive changes that'll come out of this. I think the carbon footprint in the real estate industry has been drastically reduced. Instead of having 5 people meet at a property to include the physical inspector and the termite guy, and the buyers and sellers are there, and their agents are all there. I mean, it's a lot of cars going out for one particular showing, or even just look at the open house scenario. I mean, the carbon footprint there has been dramatically reduced, with people now seeing beautiful homes online and really getting an in-depth look at them. And then if they really like it, then yeah, you go there and you see it and you feel it and you smell it. But I think it's cut down on a lot of that type of traffic, which, at the end of the day, maybe it's just a better way to do that aspect of the business.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned it a few times that there might be another shift coming ahead. Is that something you feel, or is that just something that you want to be open to, or is it something particular?
Well, definitely open to. So I like the way you phrased that question. I wish, like everybody, I had a crystal ball, and I do not. But I mean, I've been saying for a long time that eventually it's got to shift to a buyer's market. I mean, it's been a seller's market for a long, long time, and for a brief moment, maybe it was the tail end of 2019 or 2020, it looked like it was going in that direction. But so many markets have low inventory, interest rates are super low. You know, yes, I think that we'll reach a tipping point, and then maybe some major either political issue or cultural issue will force yet another shift. I don't know exactly what it'll be or how it'll affect our industry, but I do see another one forthcoming. I mean, I just don't see how home values can continue to climb as they have. Certainly low interest rates is a driving force behind that, but there's so many factors that could shift the balance and start putting downward pressure on the value of homes, and whether or not that happens later this year, next year, the year after, I don't know, but, um, try to prepare for it.
Yeah, and like you said, right, it's cycles, right? It's going to happen at some point, right? Like you said, it might be this year, next year, the year after, but at some point, you've got to expect that there'll be a seller's market, right? We can't be in a buyer's market.
Or vice versa. Yeah.
Sorry, you can't expect it because it's cycles, right? It's real estate. That's what's always happened, right? And you've got to expect that that'll happen. It's just that you said you've got to prepare for it, be open to it, right? And not think that all things go to the sky, right? And that it'll just continue, prices will just continue to skyrocket and everyone's going to always buy and there's going to be this frenzy forever. As long as you're open to it and kind of expecting something, right, at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this a little earlier too. I mean, how people use their homes has certainly changed during the pandemic, and the value they place on different parts of the home. In San Diego, we have such a shortage of housing that we've sort of cut through the red tape here of what we call like ADUs, additional dwelling units, or granny flats, casitas, mother-in-law suites, one and the same. But the Airbnb sort of layer to our industry has added a whole, it's another way that keeps driving property values up is now people are using their home as a source of income. A cash flow on a monthly basis through renting out rooms or so there's so many different variables and sometimes new business, new support businesses come into play that now also is a factor. Here in San Diego, we have government bodies that are looking to prevent short-term leases and rentals, right? Communities want to keep the houses for the community and not for weekend travelers and partiers or whoever. So there's a pushback now to sort of the Airbnb and VRBO market that was created. So there's so many different things to watch that affect the value of a home now. It's not just supply and demand and where interest rates are now. It's sort of like the average homeowner has the ability to get into the hospitality industry. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know. No crystal ball here, but I certainly think after the best year, perhaps in real estate history, that might be followed by something different.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. An interesting. If an agent is starting out today, right, and I'm sure you have agents that join your brokerage that are starting out today. How do you advise them? What advice would you give someone that's a brand new agent right now?
Yeah, this conversation has also come up in my life recently, and I think that real estate has evolved in this way too. There's a lot for the individual agent to do on their own. So if you're going to go out there and you're sort of wet behind the ears and you're new to the industry, to build your network and your database and lead generate and market and advertise and learn all the new forms and disclosures and make sure you're staying ethical and in compliance with whatever governing agencies have oversight into your industry. I mean, there's just a lot to it. I feel like it's not like the old days in that I think an agent has to learn a lot more social media presence, tech, all the bolt-on technology that so many of us use in our practices. Or in Keller Williams' case, they've got Command, which is sort of an all-in-one tool that helps you with your file flow and form tracking, touch points with your agents. I'm sort of looking at it from this way. If somebody wants to be an individual agent, I'd say that's great. Build your database, make your calls. But in many cases, I'll sort of, through questions and probing questions and whatnot, discover that maybe they'd be a great fit on a team, and sort of not have the tremendous pressure of not knowing what they're doing while they're transacting their first couple deals. When you get on a team, it sort of takes some of that pressure off, but you also learn different aspects of the business, I think, in a more fundamental way. One of the biggest issues I think agents have had is there's such a low barrier to entry in our industry. It's very easy to get a real estate license compared to other industries. If you're going into finance, you might have to get your Series 66 or Series 6 and, various different credentials and degrees. Real estate, you sign up, you take the course, you pass the test, you get licensed, and off you go. So I think that because of that, a lot of people run their businesses by their bootstraps instead of running their business like an actual business and knowing what their return on investment is on certain expenses, whether they're Facebook advertising, direct mail marketing, hired an ISA to make outbound calls. Knowing how to run your business, I think these days, is a lot of what I've been coaching and teaching. And I think how Keller Williams sort of takes that approach to business is, let's actually look like, do you have a balance sheet? Do you have a profit and loss statement? Do you even know what that is? So folks that are coming in, I sort of try to connect them with a mentor or somebody who's been in the business longer so that they can get through that learning curve faster. And the reason I sort of guide people along in that direction these days is just that I think our industry has evolved. There's a lot more to do and be responsible for. It's a lot to keep up with, maintaining communication with your clients, processing the file. And, in any given real estate transaction, you've probably got no less than 20 people working on the file between escrow officers, title reps, inspectors, agents, principals, and clients, mortgage people. You go right down the line. There's a lot of people involved, and so a good agent has to be able to quarterback all that. And so another great tip is to align yourself with great business partners, right? Find that escrow officer that you connect with and that will help you get through the learning curve. Make sure you have the right vendors. So termite inspectors, physical inspectors, right? Your mortgage officer or loan officer should be stellar. Title reps, build your team and then lean on them, because there's too much to learn in our industry. I mean, I'm continually learning, and I've been at it 20 years, and there's just no end to how you can run your business. And there's a lot of shiny objects in our business too, so there's all these pieces of information coming at us and people reaching out to us with different products and services, and it's hard to decide which CRM should I use, what marketing campaign should I go after, what should my message be. There's a lot, and so lining up with a team and or surrounding yourself with great people, I think that's the right way to get started.
Yeah.
Keller Williams, I'll throw this plug in there for them too. I mean, they do a lot of great training, so many classes and educational materials and libraries of content, and it's quite a good place for new agents to come into.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That was a great answer, by the way. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So it was a long one.
No, that was great. No, I was really good, really good. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling-related real estate questions. So I think you're ready for this. So the first one is, what would your wrestling name be if you picked one for yourself?
So first of all, I love that you used to be a wrestler, and you mentioned some names before the show, Randy Macho Man Savage, and you had the Hulk and Andre the Giant. These are all guys that I grew up, watching WWF and whatnot. Anyway, short notice, but I think I'd go with something like Pistol Pete.
Pistol Pete. Okay, I like that. That's a good one. Every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in real estate, you think?
Hmm. Jumping off the top ropes with maybe the body slam, the slammer jammer. You know, what would be my special move? Honestly, I have to think that caring, empathy, and really listening to my clients is probably the thing that has propelled my career the longest. And that's really just solving a problem for somebody else, coming at it from that perspective. Puts your heart and your head in the right place, and it's easier, I think, to work from that mindset. So having the right mindset has been key. I'd say my special move is empathy, and really just listening to what my clients' needs are, their wants, and helping them through what in often cases is the biggest decision of their life.
Yeah.
Or at least biggest financial decision of their life in many cases.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you said, having that empathy and able to understand their position, right, where they're coming from, what they're looking at, right, helps you then guide them to what they're trying to achieve, right? Because if you understand what they're trying to do and what their worries, their concerns are, what their excitement is, what they want, it just helps to
It
build that picture.
makes everything go so much smoother, right? 100%.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in the
I think that 07, 08, my first downturn in a market. I mean, I had come in right out of college, gotten into the mortgage game and the refi boom, bought into a franchise. I mean, everything was going great. It's like we talked about earlier as well. When things are going good, you think they're always going to continue to go well. And when things start to turn bad, the psychology of people at large starts to, everything's going to continually go bad. And man, that was my first downturn, market shift, or recession, the Great Recession that I ever went through, and that just felt like a punch to the gut. There's a lot, I think for a lot of businesses, there was hardship and tough times and decisions. People that you hired that you had to let go of. That's always one of the hardest things. Is you know the revenue stream of people that you care for also being affected by what's happening with your business. I mean, that certainly ages you quicker than not.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a rough one. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we alluded to this earlier too. Deciding to start my own business and put my money on the line, all of it at the time, to buy into a franchise and open up an office, and that gamble and that risk. Is it going to work? Is this going to be is this going to be a long-term success? Or that was, from a business standpoint or a career standpoint, a huge challenge. And that's sort of what people refer to, I think, in the world as courage, right? Being afraid, but going anyway. Um, and so certainly starting a business and being accountable for more people than myself, and knowing that was going to be the case, and I would be married to that business and I'd be doing whatever it takes, nights, weekends, to make it work. Um, that certainly was a top rope moment for me.
And how did you overcome that? Did you just have a driving ambition, an entrepreneurial spirit? Does it just
The entrepreneurial spirit's there for sure, but I think in moments like that, if you've got a clear vision and your heart and your head are in the right place, you've got to overcome those fears, because that is how you grow. And so even if it's a failure, it'll be a success on some level, because you'll never look back and think, I should have, but I didn't. I've tried to live a life of taking some leaps that way, because I do think it forces you to grow. And so for me, the short answer is I just did it. I just went for it. I just said, you know, pardon my French, but screw it. Let's do this thing.
just close your eyes and jump, right? And hope for the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did, and it obviously worked out. And obviously that's testament to your character and your work ethic and your skill set and your mindset and everything that that you put into that business to make it work. So I'm happy that you did, and I'm happy that it worked out. You definitely deserve all the success you have, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And you're a great guy. Love talking to you, man. I can tell anyone who works for you, they're lucky to work for you, because I'm sure you put them first, right? And I can kind of tell you have that attitude. So I really appreciate you as that about you as a person, but also the knowledge that you have and everything that you shared today has been really, really good. It's been brilliant, actually, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. So I appreciate that. But before we go, where can people find out more about you, your brokerage, if they, maybe they're in, you're in San Diego, right? We never covered that. Sorry. In San Diego, they're looking for a property. They want to work with some agents, or they want to sell their homes. How can they get in touch with you? How can they find out more?
Sure, great. Yeah. First of all, Barry, thank you for all those kind words, and the feeling's mutual. I mean, likewise, you are a great conversationalist, and it's been really fun to be on your show. So thank you. I hope this is the beginning of a longer relationship, and maybe we do this again sometime. Yeah, it's been
Absolutely, I
great.
would love that. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, so my just easiest way to probably reach me is through email, and the address is pete@usaebroker.com.
Perfect. Do you guys have a website if they want to check that out?
Yeah, PeteDursiRealEstate.com.
Okay, and also you have the Instagram as well. That's where I reached out to you. Is it Pete Dursi? No, what is it? Sorry.
It's also Pete Dursi Real Estate.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll put all those links in the description down below and in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about that. So everyone.
Cool. Yeah. And if anyone is just listening, last name is Dursi.
Dursi, yeah. Cool. Well, Pete, thank you so much, man. I genuinely mean that. I love that conversation. Really enjoyed it. Have an awesome rest of your day out there in San Diego. I'm sure it's not the worst place in the world to live, so enjoy it.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Appreciate it.